What's up, YouTube fight fans? In today's video, we're talking Paulo Costa. Specifically, is Paulo Costa on PEDs? And we're starting right now. The MMA world is looking forward to September 26th for UFC 253, where Israel, the Last Stylebender, Adesanya, will look to defend his UFC middleweight belt against Paulo Borrachinha Costa. In a video I did, which is titled 9 Interesting Facts About Paulo Costa, I list a quote from where Adesanya states he believes that Costa is on PEDs, and he also states how he wants to pop him before USADA pops him. Now, when someone looks at the physique of Paulo Costa, it's no wonder they would assume he may be using PEDs. The guy's built like some sort of physique competitor. In an era where USADA is testing their athletes, is it possible that Paulo Costa can actually get away with using PEDs? Let's have a look. Brazil. Now, Adesanya states how Brazil reminds him of his childhood home of Lagos, Nigeria, and he knows how third world countries are run. He also goes on to speak about a quote he'd heard about where Costa states he hasn't been tested. So, has Costa not been tested for their upcoming fight on September 26th? Well, one just has to go to the USADA website for the athlete's test history. Now, as you'll notice, this database is updated weekly. So we should be able to see if Paulo Costa has been tested leading up to his fight with the Last Stylebender. Now, we can just scroll to the bottom of the page where we would select the year, sport, and first and last name of the athlete in question. In this case, Paulo Costa. And immediately we'll notice that so far in 2020, Paulo has been tested 5 times. Well, was that earlier in the year, or has he been tested at all leading into UFC 253? So let's select quarter 1, which would be the first 3 months of 2020, and we see he was tested 1 time in that period. Quarter 2, which would be April through June 2020, and again, he was only tested 1 time. Now, let's select quarter 3, and we'll see that he's been tested 3 times in the third quarter, which would entail July through September 2020. Clearly, Paulo was just trolling Adesanya when he posted this on Twitter, stating, "Unfortunately to you, runner Sanya, USADA never came to test me in Brazil." Israel would also state in his interview with Luke Thomas that he'd been recently tested twice as of the time of that interview. Adesanya, that is, got tested twice as of the time of that interview. Now, that interview was on August 27, 2020. Since we're here, let's go ahead and take a look at the Last Stylebender's testing history for 2020. We'll put in his name in for the athlete search, and in 2020, we see he's been tested 7 times. In quarter 1, he was tested 4 times, which would make sense being that he was scheduled to fight with Yoel Romero on March 7, 2020 for UFC 248. In quarter 2, again April through June, we see Adesanya being tested 1 time, and here in quarter 3, July through September, he was tested 2 times, which is clearly the 2 times that he had discussed in his interview. Both fighters have been tested a total of 3 times to this point, leading into their fight on September 26th. Next, it's been stated that Paulo Costa's physique has dramatically changed from his time on TUF Brazil to his run through the UFC ranks. So I went ahead and did a photo comparison of his physique on TUF and his physique when he last fought against Yoel Romero on August 17, 2019. And I mean, you can judge for yourself. He seems to be a bit leaner the night prior to his fight with Yoel, but even in the photo mid-fight where his muscles would be full of blood due to all of the activity in the fight, there's just not an overwhelming difference in my opinion, but you can judge for yourself. Now, Costa was originally going to be the first opponent for Adesanya to defend his middleweight strap in his first defense, but Paulo would go on to tear his bicep and have surgery in order to repair the tear. In an interview, the eraser would go on to say, I already knew about this injury. I fought with it anyway. I had a biceps tear, so I only had 50% power on my left arm, but I fought and won. Then I went to the doctor after it, and it had gotten worse. Since the next fight is even more important as it's for the title and will still take a while to happen, we decided it was time to go under the knife. So he goes on to reveal that this was an injury he'd been dealing with leading into the fight with Yoel Romero, where he still competed but had made it worse. Now, why is this important? Well, let's see. What exactly is a bicep tear? A bicep tear is a strain or tear in the bicep muscle that can occur in the shoulder or the elbow. The tear can be complete. See, the tendon has torn completely away from the bone, or it can be a partial tear. Some would go on to point out that a bicep tear is something that's prone to happen to an individual using performance-enhancing drugs, as these injuries are very common in the bodybuilding world. After some digging, I came across this article published on the American Journal of Sports Medicine titled Ruptured Tendons in Anabolic Androgenic Steroid Users, a cross-sectional cohort study. The link will be in the description below. Long story short, a total of 142 experienced male bodybuilders, 88 steroid users, and 54 non-steroid users were recruited to do a study on tendon tearing likely between the two different types of lifters. The results would state that, interestingly, upper body tendon ruptures occurred exclusively in the steroid using individuals, with a total of 15 versus 0 non-steroid users. Okay, so I mean, that's for bodybuilders, but there have been no case studies on mixed martial artists to date that I could find. Have there been any other MMA fighters to have reported bicep tears? Some think maybe Robbie Lawler and Alir Latifi may have torn their biceps by looking at the shape of their biceps. But the only other reported torn bicep that I could find, the irony, I tell you, was for one Mr. Johnny Hendricks. Now, many associate the use of PEDs with Johnny Hendricks due to the drastic drop-off in his performance abilities post-USADA. This is merely speculation, as Hendricks never tested positive for any PED usage. In a recent interview on April 29, 2020, Hendricks would go on to state that the removal of IV usage is what would lead to his drastic drop-off in performance, as he would struggle to make weight and would not be able to properly recover or hydrate prior to his fights without the usage of IVs. You be the judge. Speaking of IVs, we know that Paulo Costa was suspended by USADA for 6 months due to IV usage in 2017. In his breakdown of Adesanya versus Costa, Faraz Zahabi would go on to state he was flagged for an IV. IVs don't mean you were taking a drug. There's no drug necessarily in the IV. However, you can dilute the drugs in your system, and therefore you can screw up a test. When they test you for dope, it might be the case that you pass the test, or the test can't detect the dope because you have diluted it with the IV. Mind you, Faraz doesn't state that Paulo Costa is on PEDs, but he would not be surprised if he was. While it may be possible that using an IV can dilute a drug sample, the IV usage for which Paulo Costa admitted to taking were post-weigh-ins UFC 212 June 2nd, 2017, and post-weigh-ins UFC 217 where he fought Johnny Hendricks. The irony, I tell you. So is Paulo Costa on PEDs? Since having joined the UFC in 2017, Paulo Borrachinha Costa has been tested 43 times by USADA and has passed every single test. So to this point, regardless of the opinion of someone, the evidence would say no. He is innocent until proven guilty. I mean, at least that's how it should be. But if he's somehow cheating and getting away with it, well, time will tell. Tell me in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, make sure to click that like button. Videos are popping off on the regular, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Till the next one, I'm the Pro Fight Fan, and I'm signing out.